I was standing in the middle of my resort's sunlit lobby when I heard the gentle tap of paws on the polished hardwood. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see golden retrievers chasing each other in the private play yard, their tails high, their laughter like barks filling the air. I smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile people post on glossy brochures. This one was quieter, deeper, the kind you give when you've built a world out of the ashes someone left you in. The scent of lavender dog shampoo floated from the grooming suite. Behind me, a receptionist answered the phone with the cheerful tone we train for. In front of me, a couple in their 40s walked in. Strangers, I thought, until the woman pushed back her sunglasses. My chest tightened. Claire Bennett. The same woman who, 12 years ago, decided my best friend, a brown-eyed mutt named Cooper, was too much work and sold him without telling me. I felt my silk blouse cling slightly to my back. The August heat outside hadn't quite let go, and neither had I. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a reminder to check the afternoon arrivals, but all I could focus on was Claire's face, now frozen as she looked up at the gold-lettered sign above my head. Haven Hills Luxury Pet Resort. Owner, Emma Blake. She opened her mouth to speak. I was 19 when I moved back into my Aunt Claire's house in Austin, Texas. My mom had passed the year before, and Claire was doing me a favor, her words, not mine. The arrangement came with invisible rules. Stay quiet, don't take up too much space, and most importantly, don't get too attached to anything she didn't approve of. Cooper was the one exception I fought for. I'd rescued him from behind a diner near my college dorm, his ribs sharp under his fur, his tail wagging as if I were the first kind face he'd seen in days. He had these soulful brown eyes that felt like they saw everything. We became inseparable. I'd take him for late-night walks under the soft glow of street lamps, whispering secrets into the warm fur behind his ear. When the world felt too heavy, Cooper would curl up beside me, his steady breathing telling me I wasn't alone. But Claire never liked him. She said dogs were messy and smelled like trouble. I learned to keep Cooper out of sight when she came home from work, brushing away paw prints before she noticed. Still, she'd wrinkle her nose and mutter about the mutt. The day it happened was ordinary until it wasn't. I came home from my part-time shift at the coffee shop to find Cooper's leash missing from its hook. "Where's Cooper?" I asked, already feeling a strange hollowness in my chest. Claire didn't look up from her magazine. "Sold him. A nice family from Houston came this morning. They'll take better care of him." The words hit like a physical blow. My knees went weak. "You what?" Without asking me? Her voice was sharp. "He was my responsibility while you were at work. You couldn't afford him anyway. Stop being dramatic." I felt my hands tremble, my nails digging into my palms. The lump in my throat made speaking almost impossible. He wasn't just a dog. He was... I stopped because she wouldn't understand. She'd never understand. That night, I sat on my bed holding Cooper's worn leather collar, the brass tag still warm from my grip. I remembered what Mrs. Harris, the elderly woman next door, once told me when she saw me crying after an argument with Claire. Sometimes they take what you love most so you'll learn to build something they can't touch. I didn't know it then, but she was right. Losing Cooper lit a quiet fire in me, one that would burn for years. And it started with a single decision. I wasn't going to let anyone have that kind of power over me again. Leaving Claire's house wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors, no screaming match. I just packed a duffel bag, tucked Cooper's collar into the side pocket, and walked out before sunrise. The air was cool, but my hands were sweating around the handle. I didn't have a plan, only a certainty that staying meant more losses. My first job was at a small animal shelter on the edge of town. The pay was barely enough for gas and groceries, but the work gave me purpose. I cleaned kennels, bathed muddy strays, and learned how to read the body language of dogs, the way their ears tilted when they were scared, the way their tails flicked when they were curious. That's where I met Margaret Walsh, the shelter's director. She was in her 50s, with silver hair always tied in a bun and a voice that carried across the room. Margaret had been rescuing animals for 30 years, and she ran the place with a mix of compassion and iron discipline. "You've got the hands for this work," she told me one afternoon, watching me coax a skittish beagle out of his cage. But hands aren't enough. You need a head for business if you want to make a difference. Under her guidance, I learned more than animal care. She taught me budgeting, marketing, negotiating with suppliers. She made me track every dollar we spent and every minute we invested in training a dog. Still, there were nights I'd sit in my tiny studio apartment, staring at the peeling paint and wondering if I'd made a mistake leaving. My bank account was a whisper from empty. Sometimes, I'd lie awake hearing phantom paw steps on the floor, imagining Cooper's weight against my legs. But the winds kept me going. The first time a family adopted a senior dog I'd rehabilitated, the joy on their faces was worth more than any paycheck. When a local bakery hired me to walk the owner's bulldog every afternoon, I saved enough to take an online course in canine behavior. Then came a pet-sitting gig for a wealthy couple heading to Europe. Their home had marble floors, a backyard pool, and a golden retriever that slept on a custom orthopedic bed. That job planted a seed. What if there was a place where dogs could live like that while their owners traveled? Somewhere safe, clean, and filled with love, where no dog was ever unwanted. For 2 years, I built my dream quietly. I took on extra shifts, saved every tip, and picked up side jobs designing simple websites for local businesses. When people asked what I was up to, I shrugged. Just working, I'd say. I didn't want Claire or anyone from my past to know. Not yet. By 27, I'd signed the lease on a property just outside Austin, 3 acres with an old farmhouse and plenty of open space. I scrubbed, painted, landscaped, and turned it into a place I would have been proud to bring Cooper. And when I finally hung the gold-lettered sign reading Haven Hills Luxury Pet Resort, I didn't invite my family to the opening. Some things were sweeter when discovered by accident. Claire's eyes swept the lobby slowly, as if she wasn't sure where to look first. Maybe it was the polished marble reception desk, or the framed photographs of happy dogs lounging on plush beds. Maybe it was the wide glass doors leading to the outdoor play park. Artificial turf, so clean it looked unreal, shaded cabanas for midday naps, a splash pool for the retrievers. She wore a fitted linen blazer and heels, but her hand clutched a leash like it was something unfamiliar. At the other end was a small white Maltese, its fur trimmed into a perfect round puff. The dog looked up at me with curious dark eyes. "You're Emma?" Claire finally said, her voice pitched higher than I remembered. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Welcome to Haven Hills." I could feel the staff watching discreetly from the grooming suite. They didn't know our history. I'd never spoken about it, but they could sense the weight in the air. "I didn't realize you worked here," she said, glancing around again. "I don't work here," I corrected, my voice steady. "I own it." Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came. I let the silence stretch, giving her time to take it all in. The gold-lettered sign behind me, the discreetly placed awards on the wall, Best Pet Resort in Central Texas, top small business owner under 30. The framed newspaper clipping about our rescue program. Claire's gaze fell on a photograph near the front desk. It was of me kneeling beside a rescue shepherd mix, both of us grinning like idiots. The dog wore a bright red collar. Not Cooper's, but close enough that I saw her flinch. "So," she cleared her throat, "this is all yours?" "All mine," I confirmed. The Maltese yipped softly, tugging against the leash. She bent down to scoop it up, maybe to avoid my eyes. "I was hoping," she began carefully, "that you might have space to board Lily here. My house is being renovated, and—" I raised a brow. "You want to leave your dog with me?" She hesitated. "Yes. I heard you're the best." A small, ironic laugh escaped me. "Funny. 12 years ago, you told me I couldn't take care of a dog." Her cheeks colored, but she didn't look away. "That was a long time ago." "Yes," I said. "Long enough for me to build a life you didn't think I was capable of. Long enough for me to understand exactly what care means, for an animal and for myself." The silence between us wasn't hostile, but it wasn't warm either. She shifted her weight, glancing around as if the opulence might soften me. Finally, I walked around the counter and stopped a few feet away from her. We have space for Lily, I said. But here, every guest and their owner is held to a standard. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean? I mean, I said, that we don't just provide luxury. We provide respect, commitment, and compassion. It's non-negotiable. If you want Lily to stay here, you agree to our rules. No abandonment. No neglect. You check in regularly, and you take responsibility for her well-being. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I understand. I could see it, the flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe realization. As I took Lily gently from her arms, I caught a faint whiff of the expensive perfume Claire had always worn. But this time, it wasn't overpowering. It was just there. I looked down at Lily, who wagged her tiny tail, and then back at Claire. We'll take good care of her. That's a promise. What I didn't need to say, was that I'd been keeping promises like that ever since the day she broke hers. Over the next few days, Lily settled in like she'd been born here. She loved the bone-shaped splash pool, barked enthusiastically during group play, and had developed a habit of curling up beside my office chair while I worked on invoices. Claire came by on the third day for her first scheduled visit. She stepped into my office cautiously, her eyes flicking over the framed photos on the wall, me with shelter rescues, adoption day celebrations, and smiling clients. I motioned for her to sit. So, I began about Lily's stay. We need to talk about a few conditions. She tilted her head. Conditions? Yes, I said, folding my hands on the desk. We have these for all owners, but in your case, they're also about more than Lily. Claire leaned back, guarded but curious. Go on. First, I said, you commit to daily updates when Lily's not here. Photos, check-ins, vet visits on schedule. If you can't make time for her, you don't get to keep her. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. Second, you volunteer, at least twice a month, at an animal shelter. There's one just 15 minutes from your house. They always need people to walk dogs, clean kennels, or help with adoptions. Her brows drew together. I don't. This isn't a negotiation, I said gently but firmly. If you want Lily to board here, you agree to these terms. And third, I paused, leaning forward slightly. Third, you take responsibility for what happened with Cooper. Not to me, to yourself. You acknowledge it. You learn from it. You don't repeat it. Claire's face was unreadable, but I saw her fingers tighten around the strap of her purse. That was years ago, she murmured. Years don't erase choices, I replied. But they can shape the ones you make next. For a moment, I thought she might walk out. Instead, she sighed, a slow, reluctant exhale, and nodded. All right, I'll do it. I studied her face, looking for any sign of insincerity. But there was something different in her eyes, maybe the same flicker I'd noticed on the first day. Good, I said, softening my tone. Because Lily deserves someone who shows up. And maybe, this time, you can be that person. When she left, I stood by the window and watched her walk to her car. The sun was low, turning the resort's gardens golden. Lily's tiny head peeked out from the play yard fence, ears perked, tail wagging. I smiled to myself. This wasn't revenge. It was accountability, wrapped in the same compassion I'd built this place on. In a way, the conditions weren't just for Claire. They were for me too, proof that I could stand firm without closing my heart. And that was something I'd never been able to do before. 2 months later, Claire walked into the shelter near her neighborhood wearing sneakers and a plain t-shirt, no heels, no designer bag. Margaret had called me earlier that week, chuckling over the phone. Guess who just spent 3 hours bathing rescue puppies? At first, I'd assumed Claire was checking a box to keep Lily's spot at the resort. But then I saw her here, at Haven Hills, arriving early for Lily's weekend pickup with a bag of new toys and a donation for our rescue fund. She looked lighter. Lily's been great, I told her, handing over the leash. She's made friends with just about every dog here. Claire smiled, a real one this time, and crouched to hug Lily. I've been volunteering every Saturday, she said, almost shyly. It's different, but in a good way. I nodded. That's how it starts. After she left, I walked into my office and pulled open the bottom desk drawer. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, was Cooper's old leather collar. The brass tag was scratched and dull, but the weight of it in my hand was grounding. I turned it over slowly, tracing the worn edges with my thumb. I'd kept it through every move, every stage of my life, from the nights I cried myself to sleep in that studio apartment to the day I hung the sign over the resort gates. Once, this collar had been a reminder of what I'd lost. Now, it was proof of what I'd built. I thought of Mrs. Harris's words so long ago. Sometimes they take what you love most so you'll learn to build something they can't touch. I smiled, slipping the collar back into its place. She'd been right. Outside, I could hear the sounds of paws on the playroom floor, the low rumble of a happy bark, and the steady rhythm of life in the place I had created. I stood in the doorway for a moment, letting the Texas sun spill across my face. "They took my dog without asking," I said quietly, almost to myself. "So I built a world where no one could ever take him or me again." And then I walked back to work, the sound of happy dogs filling the air like music.